if I had $1,000 today and I had to make $3,000 back by next week, I would not run a $1,000 meta ad. I would send $1,000 worth of our product to strategic people and places. I think what you're going to run into with the AI on two fronts is from if I hire AI or the founders and entrepreneurs and the business owners, we hire AI as a salesperson. They're not going to be able to relate. I don't care how good they get. The AI will never be able to do that. They'll never know.
Welcome to the DTC Insider Podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisenthal.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider Podcast. I'm Brian Roisenthal, your host, and today I'm joined by Taylor Artman, co-founder and CEO of Surf and Turf Golf. Hey, Taylor, thanks for being on the show.
Got it, of course. I'm actually a listener myself. I've had many long car rides where I've listened to plenty of episodes. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thank you for being a listener. I really appreciate that. Taylor, I know you've been in business for a decade now. Congrats, with this venture at least. So what can you tell us about, the evolution of e-commerce? Because I know that many companies listening to us started after the pandemic before, but it was a totally different landscape, wasn't it?
It was. The e-com world has changed in, I guess, hidden ways and then obvious ways since COVID. I would say that what happened when the internet came out in 2000, right? Around then, there was a similar kind of switchover in 2020, 2021, but not exactly as clear. We don't really know what it was, but things changed. And so when we first started, there was obviously e-com was huge, but it became a necessity through COVID. And so it definitely had a big part.
And I didn't ask you, but please go ahead and tell the audience about the brand. What do you guys sell? What is it about?
So we are a golf and lifestyle brand, but ironically, we started out as a social club in Southern California. Yep, myself and a couple guys that founded it were professional golfers, played PGA Tour Canada, one guy at Korn Ferry, and then a couple of the guys were PGA of America professionals at two clubs out in La Quinta, Palm Desert, California. So we call it the desert. And so a lot of people move out there in the golf industry for essentially permanent summers, right? They either, if they work in the industry, they go summer in Tahoe or Aspen or Canada or wherever, and then they go winter in the desert. And same thing with players. And so when we started it, the idea behind the club was to bring in the top golf boom of people that had began to respect and enjoy the game and learn about it. But the barrier to entry into Southern California, that it's so expensive to join a membership, or if you want to play a decent course of any kind, it's either jam-packed, so you got to book your tee time way in advance, and if you don't know, you don't know. Or you're going to go play a resort that it's not jam-packed because it costs $200 and some, right? And so if you don't have the capacity financially to do a membership, then those other two options kind of suck, And so we wanted to provide a outlet using the two booms in golf, I believe, were, in my generation at least, were the Tiger Woods generation that brought these athletes and new people into the game. And that would be us now. And then this Top Golf that brought new people into the game but they don't ever get to play real golf. And so we thought that we could be ambassadors of the game that's like they're with us, and we could bring them in. And we formed this club that we would have either charity tournaments at a par 3 and we'd have people in. But the idea behind it was we were going to bring in, 75 to 100 of our members to go play like an inter club or a versus match with 75 to 100 private members. And during that time, we created some merchandise that we would give out as gifts to whomever participated or was involved. And after doing that, my partner Jordan used to use like Imperial or something like that. We were just a club, so we just used a vendor of something that we respected and fit and felt good. And people loved our logo. And all of a sudden, throughout the desert, throughout other areas, we're all connected in different parts across the country. People were asking, like, where do I get that shirt? Where do I get that hat? And we were like, well, I don't know if you can have one. You got to join the club, right? And so after a while, and a lot of the founders and marketers and stuff listening, people ask you, can I buy that enough? And you're going to find a way to make it available to whomever's asking that question. And so that was when I kind of took a role from a contributing founder and member of the club to more so a founder of the next, I guess, the business model of what we are now. And that is Surf and Turf Golf, which we are a golf and lifestyle company. And we have the Surf and Turf Club on one side and Coast to Coast Apparel is what we call it on the other side. And so I would say that I founded more so the apparel side and the overall umbrella and less of the club. So we still have the club. It's more of a speakeasy. But that was when I had some apparel ties and I entered that game and started using some connections. And where our unique story started was this being D2C Insider was we actually went B2B in a way bigger and more viral or, boom way than we did D2C. And I feel like in the last 10, 15, even 20 years since the internet and since social media and whatever, those brands are few and far between anymore. They either had that presence way back and then they took it in and then took off the DTC, or they got viral on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or Snapchat or whatever, or through influencers. And then B2B came. Now, how do I sell in stores, right? And we've done the opposite. And so we've had a pretty unique road from there. And now our brand positioning is, I think, very unique in both, not just what we offer, but how we put ourselves and our chess pieces on the board.
I think that, that's very interesting. And I'm fascinated by the fact that you did the opposite, as you said. And these days, everyone is so focused on the next meta ad they will launch or Google ad they will launch and the next hack to make things work. And don't get me wrong, it's something that we all do. We all try to improve, why not, performance on the ad platforms. But brands really want to stand out. I always tell them, and I always preach this through my newsletter and LinkedIn, everywhere is like, and I get these not only from people we work with, but from brands I interview, such as yourself as well. And it's going beyond the storefront, because back then you didn't have a choice, right? There wasn't meta ads, or there was, but it wasn't the same. Getting in front of your audience offline, even online these days with online communities, goes a long way, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And that's where D2C, I think, goes well beyond e-commerce, right? When you think of it, it's direct to consumer. And so when you're doing that, it's putting yourself in front of customers to go give them the recognition and the awareness that when they see your product, when it's placed properly in front of them and the time works and the pricing and that, the need is there, that they purchase. And, I think that with any founder that's starting, those meta ads, I literally, I must say, I've gained a lot of skill sets, and I came in with a few, most of them having to do with golf versus business or just general problem solving, but not anything with the savvy social media, software type stuff. I still struggle with understanding a lot of that stuff. And I know other founders do, and they feel silly, right? With the meta ads and like, what's the difference between a sponsored ad on Instagram versus running a meta ad or a Google Analytic or you name it, right? And I still kind of get confused on where one starts and the other one stops, or why one's $5 a day and can turn into $500, and one might cost $500 a day and only turned in $500 in that same day. I don't know, like what's going on there. And
because as founders, we all wear many hats, right? And we cannot know it all, right? And it's normal. And sometimes these days, it's even confusing for advertising agencies or advertisers in general, whether they are brands or agencies, because things are so fussy these days ever since the privacy policies from Apple in 2021. But yeah, anyway, what's your background, by the way? Because you mentioned something about it, this not being your expertise.
So I went to college. I got a business degree, but let's not go too deep into that because I'll expose myself that I didn't pay that close attention. But I played college golf. And so I was there to play college golf in order to turn professional golf. I'd won at the junior level nationally. I'd became good in my state, and then nationally at the smaller college level. And I knew that I was going to at least go see if I could do that again at the next level. And so I knew I was going there. So I was finishing college to do that. And so when it comes to my business background, it's limited at best. I was good enough to be dangerous, maybe. And so I went and played 7 years professional golf. I did coach college golf for 2 years in there. I gave that up kind of because I watched players behind me on the team go and have success on a worldwide stage. And it's like I was their team captain, or whatever. I could play with them and they're going to do this or that. I'm like, I gotta while I'm young here. And so I went and teed it up full time. And that took me to California. And that's when I met my co-founders and I met our initial community. And the Surf and Turf brand would never have happened had I not moved out there to pursue the dream of pro golf. So my background is strictly golf to golf to golf, right? In every way. And business was never a part of it. And I always wondered what I would do. And, I'm sure so many different people can relate, not just founders, but just anybody out there, right? When I got hurt in 2017, I started seeing the end. I was playing good enough to keep playing, but I was not playing good enough to, really feel comfortable financially. I was still needed to get either sponsors or help from friends and family, or I was bartending for a little while, make enough money to go do whatever, and just cutting corners to stay alive out there. And I wondered, well, what am I going to do? And at one point, I think I paid for something to get a real estate license, but I had no passion for that at all, and I was searching, and so I really stumbled into this when we started this social club, and then that's when I started realizing, oh, I can still stay in this community, to this network, to these same people that I currently like involving with, and I realized I'm not getting my energy necessarily from playing golf. I'm getting it from being a part of sport and the camaraderie of something way bigger than the game, right? And it's a lifestyle, and being out there and traveling and all that. And Surf and Turf kind of provided me that. So I've got an underwhelming resume, but I've got a pretty, I guess, expansive connectedness to our industry. And just lifestyle, sport, and fashion.
Yeah, it sounds like you're living the dream, right? And it's a dream come true to many people, not because of how well or not business is doing now or in the past. It's because you're staying in the golf space, you're connected to it. Because some people, play soccer, football, whatever, and sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't for a while, and then they move to something else, to the next thing, and that's fine too. But you were able to stay connected to golf one way or the other, so it's amazing.
You're exactly right. And we had the PGA show recently, and that's a reminder every year that I get to go do that. And even if as a player, I saw Charles Howell III there and some other PGA Tour players, but not a ton. I think I'm seeing parts of the industry I wouldn't have really understood or known, even if I achieved my wildest dreams on the playing side. And to be able to continue to stay there. But not only that, we sponsored Conference USA. I used to play basketball as a kid, and I love basketball. Everybody wanted to be Michael Jordan, play for North Carolina before they wanted to do anything, right? And so, or be like Ronaldo in soccer or whatever. And we all have those childhood dreams, and I've gotten to do some really cool stuff in a different way I never expected, but really just because I didn't say no. And I just, we kept pushing on. And my aunt always says there's always a third way. If one way is closed and another way is closed, then there's a third way that's open, and pursue it.
Yeah. I spoke with a lot of people, and I don't know it all, but I've heard a lot. And while it's not a requirement for success to be passionate, it gets so much easier when you're passionate about what you do, and people can tell. And it's amazing. There are some things that it's hard to be passionate about, and it's not a requirement. But when it is, it's you go to I don't know, you do whatever you need to do to make things work because you actually love. Yeah, you love it, and people again can tell. So I wanted to know something because so far, correct me if I'm wrong. At any point, 2016 started as a social club. You started selling. You started getting demand before you even thought about it, right? People asking you about the products. So you started selling them. What was it in 2017?
Yeah. Our first sale of without an event attached to it, right? That was in 17. Yep.
Okay.
And then we formed our LLC in either February, I want to say February or March of 17. I can't remember the exact day.
So let's say I can imagine that you built a beautiful community, so there were many sales coming from it. But how did you go from there to sell to, let's say, strangers that weren't part of the community, didn't know about the community? When did that happen and how?
Great question. Honestly, organic marketing, or I'm glad you said passion, because I think that people can sense authenticity, and people knew that we started this for, we mean it when we said like this was a brand made for us. And the reason we made it was because the other golf brands weren't fixing the need. Right. And so I have a Rip Curl hat that is up here that's on my shelf. And I couldn't wear that hat in golf competition or playing at certain golf because it was a surf hat. And I would take off my Titleist hat because I was on staff with Titleist when I played, and then I would put that hat on. And it was like, if only I could just wear this same hat, right? Both ways. And so the passion part of it, people will sense. And as far as selling to strangers, I don't think they become strangers. You find that buyer persona or that target market that you're looking for, or that you created that your why. On why'd you create this? Who buys this, right? And then who is an extension of that person, right? And you kind of create commonality and I guess some alignment with those persons out there that you don't know. They are strange, but they are also not foreign. They're the same. And so I was just speaking with a couple of ambassadors that were with us from the beginning, and I'll use them as an example. We were found as soon as we got Instagram and our website and things got out there on social media, if you will. It started with sending hats to either our initial customers, or we put it on some micro influencers, I guess would be the term, and even some bigger influencers. But I think the micro ones had more weight than others, because the bigger the celebrity, you start being numb to it because, they're all sponsored. It's those ones that are influential, but they're doing it for something other than money, And so we got it on those people, and then those people led to another person that led to another person. And it kind of went that way. And then we started getting reach outs from, I guess, other kind of micro influencers across the country, across the industry, both in golf and in other sports, or even just in media, entertainment. And those people reached out, and we gave away product to them initially. I remember having some combated, I guess, opinions toward me. You're giving away too much. You're giving away too much. And maybe I was, but I don't think so. I use those as seeds out there. If you put out a product and any founder will know that there's margins in there, whatever, you get the ROI back if you give that to the right person. And that could be a little kid, that gets an uncle and a dad and a neighbor, or their two friends to purchase or whatever. And that could be Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, we're all either minus ones, zeros, or plus ones. And so if you provide somebody something that likes it like you do, and they're gonna promote it authentically, then they become a plus one, because they led to two people that joined in the team, if you will, and that championed it with us. And so when we started, the way we got to strangers was by removing the stranger part of it. And we saw lookalikes of people like these people. They're us, but they're on the East Coast. They're us, but they're in Michigan. They're whatever. And we gave them product, and we let them show it to their people. And then now we still see remnants from certain little towns and little communities. And you see it on e-com, right? Just every once in a while you're glancing through and you see this one town and you're like, I remember that's where what's his name's parents live, and he was at that summer or whatever, that little bitty township in whatever, Vermont. And you see e-commerce sales come from there, and you notice it versus Boston or whatever. And that's because we sent that guy or that girl a hat once. And
Yes.
at the PGA show, I'm friends with these people now, and we talked about it. And the only reason we are now friends after 10 years, and they're part of our team, even though they're not employees, is because we made a hat that they resonated with. And since then, we haven't been strangers. And so, yeah, we brought in strangers and got our hats. But I think the biggest thing is authentically finding that common ground.
I think that the strategy was smart. These days is, let's say, it's done more often with this boom of social commerce. So people see the products, the creators, influencers. So many brands understand now that that's just something else that they need to do to expand to spread the word. Because if you think about it, again, depending on the on the cost that you have to make the product, right? So it's not the same to have a $5 cost than selling products that, $1,000 or more. So I get that by working with different brands. I understand the behind the scenes thinking. That being said, whatever is possible, it's actually cheaper than advertising at small scale, at least. If it costs, let's say, $5, $10 to send a product to someone, how much will it cost to, I don't know, do the same online to get a customer or to whatever, even to get someone to buy for free? So it's a $5, $10 effort that could yield no return, as you said, or it can yield a great return with an exponential or potential exponential effect. So I think it's more the upside than the downside. So I think it's worth testing.
100%.
Yeah.
I would say if there's one thing that I've pressed on with our team, but also any of our campaign strategies or anything, because we don't run ads. We have before. We don't currently run one. We've got to be one of the only um, of our size that's selling to 600 something retailers, and then we've sold in multiple countries across the nation for this long that don't run ads consistently, and that's probably not great. We probably need to fix that, and we will. But the reason for that, I think, a lot of times is we prefer to do it differently. And you're absolutely right. What is the cost of it? If you're running a social ad, once you add up all these different things and the time and so forth, what's the goal? The goal is to put your hat out there and show this product, and nothing brings in sales more than your product. It's your best, it brings in customers faster than any salesman will, or any, salesperson or marketer, if it's a good product and people like it. And so if you put it on people that are in front of other people that are paying attention to them and not necessarily influencing, I don't always love that word, but they're just paying attention. They respect them, or they see what they're doing. That will go further than those ads. I assure you. Now the ads are powerful, but I completely agree with you. If you gave me the option, if I had $1,000 today and I had to make 3,000 back by next week, I would not run $1,000 Meta ad. I would send $1,000 worth of our product to strategic people and places. And if I was going to run an ad, I'd have to pay somebody probably to get the best ROAS. And then I'm sure Meta takes a cut in there. If you go look at the nuts and bolts or whatever, I would use that to reward, incentivize, whatever you want to call those, commissions or referral kickbacks, that you use for influencer marketing. I would use that to encourage and motivate them to do so, and then continue to scale on their own. And there's nothing that will return faster. If you have a good product, nothing will return faster your investment than putting it out there in front of people. The drug dealers, they give you a hit of it. They don't put a flyer in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. They get the full experience. They get to see, first off, it's a little something that goes a long way from your end, and they appreciate that. Whenever someone sends you a gift, it's always appreciated. If they love the gift, even more. And it's something that is not expected. So when there's something unexpected, you tell people about it because you loved it. It wasn't expected. It was let's say you were showing appreciation. They were, saying, oh, like they're loyal forever. It's, yeah, I think, again, more upsides than downsides. So I wanted to ask you next, you started again way before pandemic. The pandemic hit, accelerated, let's say, e-commerce, many new brands. I don't know if in your space specifically, but many new brands were created, of course, overnight. Now many are gone as fast, right? But what's changed? What were like those few years like 2020, 2021, 2022?
You're exactly right. And in fact, I was looking at something the other day on social where it reminds you of, like, on this day or something. And it was around this time of year in 2020 or 2021. I can't remember if it was either right before or right now. They had this March Madness logo contest of new brands in, like, kind of lifestyle or apparel or whatever. And I was looking at it, and yeah, like 20 or 30 of the brands on there were icons. But 20 or 30 of those, I considered ours like the new one on the street that was one of the smaller ones. And I remember, like, it was a little bracket and it's fan voting or whatever. And so we made it pretty far. But 20 or 30 of those I thought were bigger and better than us. I looked up to them, and they don't exist anymore. And the big icons still do. And then there's about 10 or 12 like us that were in there that are either still alive, thriving, or whatever, but they're here. And I have to wonder, if some of those brands and the ones that got, I guess, kind of some rapid growth through the pandemic or before it or whatever, they were a little too dependent, I'm guessing, on branding, on influencers, on engagement, and potential or just perception versus the product. And I think brand perception is critical, that you've got to always that's one of the things. You must protect your brand when you give free stuff out. That doesn't mean it's free for everybody. You don't ever discount, as far as you must keep the premium pricing that you wish to be at. And if somebody says, well, why'd that person get one, it's like, well, they bring this to the table and they're part of this and they've earned it or whatever, and you create that opportunity for anyone to get there. But the value is the value. And I would have to wonder if all those brands during that time, they struck gold, not in product development and not in a purpose or why that they were believing in. They did it, I think, through the people they put it on, through paid ads, paid influence. And so it's the second that a higher bidder came along, those people quit wearing it. And if the sales weren't there to back it up, or the product wasn't good enough to maintain it, then it probably fizzled out. And so if you're going to pay people and pay ads or whatever, if you don't have the product to make that a lifetime customer, then you're in trouble. And so, I think that's what we ran into. We saw a lot of marketers and a lot of promoters and a lot of people, but the product people, I think, are who can make it.
They say marketing is a promise and product will show you whether it lives up to the promise or not. And you can have no marketing, great product and still thrive, right? It's not easy, but it's a way, and people will market it for you. Like it happened with you, right? With your products, people were already asking about your products even before you thought about having a brand. So it goes a long way. Product comes first. So do you know why some of those brands that you mentioned that are no longer in business aren't in business anymore?
Well, I'm sure there's a number of reasons economically with COVID and things like that. We had already been in business for 3 or 4 years, and I do know to get eligible for some of those COVID loans, a requirement was some sort of prior existence and proof of concept. If the SBA and EIDL was going to back you up. So that's probably a factor. And so if you just started overnight, now you're kind of seizing an opportunity, and you're not actually needing to be protected by this economic disaster. And so I think that would be one, is they started there and they didn't have the backup support like we were fortunate to if we had a business going before that. And then the next part, I think that the paid ads on Meta, and this is something that I've spoken to advertisers that we've hired and that have worked with other brands, and then also I've spoken with other founders who have great products that are well known or whatever, and they don't perform as well as this social media person's whatever they're making, off Alibaba or whatever, at least in the short term. And I think that a lot of those people, they seize their opportunity by paid promotions. And by that, I don't mean like everything has to come with a cost, but the person needs to have a purpose and a why behind their wearing it other than money, for it to really, truly connect. And then I think the paid ads as well gets it out there, and it gets a lot of one-time purchases. I don't think that the people there were putting enough time, energy, and value, and maybe because they couldn't get out in front of people or not, but to complement those campaigns with product placement where people would buy it if it wasn't attracted to your website. If you weren't always getting paid ads put in front of you, how can you find this product, right? And so I think that has kept us alive for sure, is our product was on shelves, and we had partnerships that went far beyond our website. So if our ad didn't run and the algorithm wasn't coming in front of Brian and the D2C insider page or whatever, that fit our, algorithm on Instagram or Meta, then how would these people see us? And so if the ads stop, the traffic stops. And you got to have those ads be a revenue driver, not dependent on your revenue.
What about the next few years after the pandemic? Because again, I speak with a lot of founders and I work in that space as well, from the agency, let's say, side, and everything that was easy, let's say, for brands when the pandemic hit wasn't the next few years. So what was it for your brand? Was there any point after the pandemic that you guys struggled and you reached a bottleneck and Yeah.
Yes. So after the pandemic, we had, well, I'll preface right before the pandemic, we did a partnership with the North Texas PGA, and this was a B2B move, but we got our product in front of a bunch of golf professionals who are the purchasers, merchandisers, decision makers for a bunch of retail shops. A golf course is a retail shop. Sometimes they have more than one. And we put it out there. In one afternoon, we did about $53,000 in sales, and it was a $1,000 sponsorship, and it cost me 100 hats to put it out there. And right there, there's no meta ad in the world that will return that value. I mean, like none. There's not. And so that right there was something. Well, I took that play and we wanted to expand it out into other athletes. And what became available after COVID was sponsorships. Brands and companies were dropping sponsorships of things because obvious cash flow issues, personnel, furloughs, whatever it may be, right? They had to cut contracts. And so an example would be that I learned a lesson, but it's coming back. But had I not had at least a strong following and brand positioning across many stores, we probably would have sunk. We took over Conference USA's presenting sponsor of apparel right after COVID. So the contract was 21 to 23. And we took on a couple small things like that, and we had to put product out there. And so like with Conference USA, we supplied product to 4,500 athletes 3 years in a row. And for the founders at home, that's a lot of money. And there was no, I don't know if I'm allowed to even say this for the contract or whatever, but there was no cash at that time because of their positioning. But we got athletes in our stuff. Well, right after COVID also, there was obviously a clear hit on everything going on. And it took a while. Half the country's shut down, half the country's back, or it was start and stops. And then, you had a lot of retailers and boutiques and, well, even the end consumer. They're waiting on their PPP check or whatever, their stimulus or to get unfurloughed in order to be able to resume life and purchase differentiated product. Otherwise they're going to have to settle for commodities. And so I think I learned a lesson there because I took the same strategy I took to the PGA, but I didn't have quite the stable foundation, and it got rocky for a minute there. And it was like, oh man, okay, year one's over. All right, we're okay. And year two was like, okay, we got through that one. And then in year three, it's like, how can we survive this partnership? And then I wasn't even caring about the ROI. It was just like, how can I do this? And because I committed hard, and you just didn't know that was going to happen. That was going to come. And you thought it was going to turn back around, and it did slowly, but it did on e-commerce more so. And I'm putting it on this through this other outlet that was more organic, and that world had changed. And so what worked one day before COVID wasn't working here. And, and I wonder, I think had I had that opportunity with no COVID, I think it would have parlayed. But I think we replaced an Adidas or something that it was a paid partnership. The reason we got that was because it was high risk. And somebody at a big company, they knew and there was risk, and they're a chief of marketing or advertising or whatever, and they knew the risks and it wasn't worth their job. And so they got out. And the entrepreneur in me saw that as an opportunity, and I took the risk because I'm not a risk averse. And nobody's that's listening to this is. Otherwise, they wouldn't start a business. And it was an ultimate lesson of, one, we're better for it. And we now are seeing the return because we've got coaches and athletes that got those gifts, and they're coming back now, and they're becoming next waves of ambassadors or even purchasers or merchandisers or whatever. But it took a long time. And I think the brands that struggled after COVID, if they weren't so lucky, because luck's a big factor, or they weren't quite as scrappy in some of their ways. If they were too dependent on those online sales, they would have crashed before they saw the return. And so it's not all rainbows out there with these plays. It's about timing. But COVID, I think the main disruptor was we didn't know that. And how could I not take that opportunity when it was worth so much more right the day before? And the conference, and I'm probably saying too much. I don't know. Legal obligations are that conference is shifted now, so I'm sure it's fine. But they needed that sponsorship, obviously, and because it was shaky ground for everybody and everyone, right? And so COVID brought just disruption, which means it brought disruptive brands in, it brought disruptive strategies in, and then it brought just disrupting just buyer behavior, and it was unpredictable. And so I feel for anyone that went through COVID, and I don't feel for the ones that didn't go through it as much that started after, because one, I do feel for them because I worry that we're going to resume back to a more people centric buyer behavior marketing. Like there's going to be a mix, right? I don't think the mall is going to be back, but people like to touch and feel product and et cetera. And I think that what you see disconnection between Hollywood and politicians and whatever to the normal person, the influencer marketing. If you go on TikTok today, on TikTok Live, there's people with 1 million followers that were like selling an insurance last week or whatever, and that they don't have a star on Hollywood, right? And so it's all changing, quickly. And so I get, I guess, concerned for those people that got hot and they're hot right now because it's going to resume back. And so if you didn't have the understanding for why things worked before, I think they're in for a rude awakening. And so I think the brands that started anything before COVID and then are still going now, they're going to survive as things, I guess, steady or even shift back upwards. Like AI is going to change everything, like everything. You don't need videographers quite much anymore. I mean, I could put in something in chat and it can make me a commercial that probably cost 50 grand in 2004,
Yeah. Tell me
And
about it.
so, yeah, I think COVID brought a lot of disruption in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, and the commerce, there's a lot of exciting stuff that we don't know so much about yet because it's barely getting started as we speak. But are we going to sell to people? Are we going to sell to AI agents? How is that going to affect commerce? Is it going to happen mainly through LLMs, AI tools, or I don't know. The only thing I know is that this is different. I say the same example always. TV didn't kill radio, online didn't kill offline, but this is different. It's not that agentic commerce or let's say purchases to be specific through ChatGPT or similar will kill websites. But this is changing. I heard someone the other day saying, you're not going to ask an AI agent to buy sneakers for you. You're going to say, or so they said, you're going to say, buy the groceries for me and my family for the entire year. And the AI will keep in mind and to never forget again, to buy groceries. If they have any, conditions, whatever they have, or food restrictions, their taste is what they like, what they don't. It'll be smarter. It's not just buy these for me. Follow this behavior for this year, whatever, right? That's just an example of many that we yet don't know about because it is humbling to say that we don't know what's going to come with that. But there are some examples for that agentic commerce that is about to start soon and it will change things. But one thing that won't change is, again, everyone is going to be there. But those that go above and beyond, like I interviewed brands that, I don't know, give 100 notes, call their customers because they want their input, that every time they release a product, they have this VIP customer group that they give products to. They have their product testers group that they send products to test before mass releasing the products, incorporating their feedback, online communities, offline communities, meetups, whatever. But that's what I see as a common denominator for the most successful brands. Can you succeed without that? Again, yes, probably it's an uphill battle these days, and it isn't.
The product testing, I think, is massive. We're actually incorporating kind of a new rendition of that, and probably a better model. We've kind of done it a bit on the fly and as needed, versus now we're going to go a different way because one, that strategy helps big time on just an initial coverage of your cost risk, when releasing something, especially if you can get them invested even on a micro level. But I would say as AI is going to change it so much. You just saw Amazon, I believe, release 16,000 employees back into the unemployment world, which is very sad. And so founders, I think, and owners and just between whether it's strategists or decision makers are going to have to decide at some point what's more important, the ROI or the relationship with your countrymen and and the people in your community. And there's going to be a balance there. I think that you'll see Amazon hire people back. If there's too many AI, too much robot, there's going to be a downside. the internet took a while, to really get where it is. And so now if we even go back 3 years now, how quickly we've forgotten, like, what do we do for chat GPT? In my lifetime, I used an encyclopedia, and it's like, and so if the internet goes down, whatever, there's gonna be some major learning curves. And so when you see Amazon go fire somebody like that, they're huge risk takers, but they can afford to learn the hard way. And so they're going in on that, and that's almost better. That's their testing. They're like, let's just go all in and see how it works, and we'll see the pain points, and then we'll fill that back in with the necessary people. Is probably what they're thinking. And so as AI and this comes, and Elon's going to make these robots, what you said at the beginning was they're going to go purchase things or whatever, and you're not going to ask them to go buy shoes, but you might. That's going to become. And now I'll go back. Product was important, and it will always be the key thing. But product differentiation, the difference between a commodity is something that is interchangeable versus a differentiated product, right? That's why you can see two things made from the same company, and one is called Great Value at Walmart, and one is sold only at Whole Foods, right? And they're branded differently. They have different perception. One is clearly invested in more. It costs more to make. They're not, as much as people want to say they're exactly alike, they're not. There's a difference. But are they the difference between $40 and $10? Probably not, right? But that perception is there. And I think what you're going to run into with the AI on two fronts is, if I hire AI or the founders and entrepreneurs and the business owners, we hire AI as a salesperson. They're not going to be able to relate. I don't care how good they get. They'll be able to answer questions directly or whatever, but we have a certain way, like if I'm working at a shoe store, you walk in, or you walk into my store and you're looking for something, I can quickly tell through conversation, through questions, through just observation, through indirect relationships we may have, right? I have a friend of a friend that's friends with you or whatever, and I know that you support X team. I'm going to point you to something there. The AI will never be able to do that. They'll never know. And even if they did know, they might know too much, where they would have to shoot in the dark at so many things. They don't really know what's real and what's just kind of there. And so from a sales point, that relatableness will struggle to resonate with people over time. And then if it's the shopper or whatever, like you have an automated shopping, that's going to work, and that's going to be great. And that's going to really, really streamline. I would love for groceries to show up, and I don't care if it's Great Value or Frosted Flakes. I don't care if it's almond milk or whatever, soy milk. I just don't want dairy or whatever, whatever it is. I really could care less. Wendy's or Whataburger, at the end of the day, those are commodities, and I'm not big on it. But as you get into differentiated product, it does matter. And you can't just go buy whatever. People want Nike Air Max shoes versus Nike Shocks or the Adidas's version or whatever. And then there's a person that wanted that Adidas version that was thrown out by the Nike supporter, and vice versa. And the AI will struggle with that. They're either going to be too exact, or they're going to be too by the requirements and not by the reason for purchase. And so I think there's going to be a disconnect there. It's going to work for a while, but people are going to like that I chose this and I'm unique and I did it different, right? And I just don't think the AI world is going to do that. It's going to make things a lot easier. And certainly if you're selling something based on price point and not based on premium perception, then AI is going to work on your favor big time. But if you're selling, there's a reason you don't see commercials for Louis Vuitton out there. They don't need commercials. Their customer doesn't watch TV. And so they are going to be found no matter what, wherever they put that product, because it's exclusive. And so I think if you've got a company or a model that's selling a service or a product that is more based on price and functionality and a purpose other than the perception and the premium level, right? The appeal to, a certain tier of customer, then you're going to benefit greatly, I think, here soon. But I think in differentiated product, whether you're a boutique with homemade designs, custom things, or just something organically thought of or created, or it's just something all new altogether, completely disruptive. How's AI going to know what that is? It doesn't even exist yet. It's not even in their algorithm.
Many questions to few answers for now about AI, but you're right. I mean, there's the rapport that we build, between two human beings is not going to be replaced, at least not in the near future. Even if we have these humanoids that are, being built, or they already exist, and they're going to be, sold to the in B2C, let's say, in the next few years. I think Elon Musk said recently in the next 1-2 years or so. But yeah, it's not the same. Connection between two human beings goes beyond being right or wrong, beyond knowing it all. In fact, knowing people who know it all, they are not the ones with more friends, let's say. It's people don't want know it alls. They want people that are wrong, imperfect. We want, again, oh, we have this person in common. Oh, I know this. So it's to build rapport with someone like us. And that's probably far from happening already. But yeah, as far as purchases online, that's changing fast. But I can keep going forever. I think that we can keep this for hours, but I want to be respectful with your time. So I wanted to thank you first for coming to the show. I really enjoyed the conversation. And before you go, I wanted you to tell the audience where they can go to learn more about you, if you are on LinkedIn or any other social network, and of course about where they can go to learn more about the brand as well.
Yeah. So our website is surfandturfgolf.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Taylor Artman. There's not many Artmans out there, so you should be able to find it. And I'm on social media. It's all public on there, so it's not hard to find. I'm not a celebrity either, so you might have to type it exactly in. But the website has got all sorts of contact us, all sorts of info, and then just for personally on a I think any listeners here with relatable connections, whether to problems or to people or to whatever. Yeah, reach out. I love having conversations. I've loved being on here, Brian. Everything. And then we've got a problem or a program actually where we do private label. So if you're in the apparel industry, I'm happy to help you in ways that I had mentors help me, and keep fighting out there. And just always remember there's a third way, because when you get to that fork in the road, that's the difference between being a business owner or a decision maker and someone that's a little more confined. Is you don't have those rules. You can create your third rule. My aunt is a great entrepreneur and has always taught me that. And so never forget there's a third way. And so as we hit all these new, hopefully not COVID, but these new times, when it looks like it's left or right, those aren't the two directions. There's going to be up and down and stay the same. I don't know. There's a third way to do it, and just be different.
I love that. So for everyone listening or watching, if you go to the DTCinsider.com and go to the podcast section, you'll be able to find the show notes for this one, including the links to the social media and the website he just mentioned. Taylor, again, it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I really enjoyed it.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.